Whether he's barking nonsensical orders, confusing his loyal aide Captain Darling, or just being blissfully unaware of reality, Blackadder's General Melchett never fails to entertain. Other than the fair Georgina, it would seem that General Melchett had little time for relationships or family life and devoted himself to a career in the army. Today, as medal researchers and history buffs, we uncover the campaign medals of our favourite walrus-faced British general to see what wars Melchett fought in and if the BBC wardrobe designers got it right. From his ribbon bar, it looks like Melchett was awarded 3 gallantry or decoration medals. Running from left to right, these are most likely the Honourable Order of the Bath, the Royal Victorian Order, and finally the Distinguished Service Order. For the sake of time, we will omit these as they are covered in my video on the Flying Ace Lothario Lord Flashart. Therefore, it looks like Melchett was awarded 10 campaign medals. 2 of these medals were awarded in pairs, so will be grouped together in the countdown. So, looking forward to the big push, let's delve into each medal. Number 1, the South Africa Medal. The first medal looks like it's a South Africa medal, colloquially known as the Zulu War Medal. This was awarded with either no clasp or 7 clasp combinations of 3 years, from 1877 to 79. The majority of medals around the time had a name of the battle or campaign as a clasp, so this was unusual. It is likely that Melchett would have had the 1879 clasp rather than the earlier clasps awarded to more veteran units like the 24th or 13th Foot, who had been in South Africa years before, campaigning in other internal conflicts. After the first invasion and the disaster at Isandlwana and the defence of Rorke's Drift, a flurry of reinforcements were called in from around the Empire to deal with the second invasion. These included units such as the 17th Lancers and the Dragoon Guards, elite cavalry units, as well as seconded officers from Guards regiments. I would have assumed that Melchett belonged to one of these socially exclusive units and was itching to get out in the field dodging the bullets or the spears instead of quaffing champagne or claret in the officers' mess. Here is a snapshot of the main engagements of the war, with British victories in red outlined and Zulu victories in green. Apologies for any mispronunciations. Although everyone thinks of Isandlwana, the Zulus also gave Colonel Wood's column a bloody nose at Hlobane, as well as superbly executing the Natombe Drift ambush. Other than the obvious Zulu War, Melchett could have also been involved in a couple of other smaller separate operations later in the year, against Basotho tribal chief Sekhukhune and Chief Morosi. The medal itself? The obverse design is Queen Victoria, still young, and the reverse an African lion crouching in submission behind a proteus shrub. It's the same as the 1854 South African medal, but has a Zulu shield and 4 crossed assegais covering a date that was written there before. The ribbon is gold with broad and narrow deep blue stripes towards each end. Number 2, the Afghanistan medal. Unlike the South Africa medal that had yearly clasps, the Afghanistan medal had clasps for significant actions. The war itself lasted from 1878 to 1880 and largely split into 2 parts. This first part was a limited invasion in 1878 in order to pressure the Afghans into accepting a British resident in Kabul, prevent Afghan intrigues on the border area, and keep Russian influence out. This involved the battles of Ali Musjid and Piwa Kotal. These achieved British victory and a peace treaty with the Afghans agreeing to a British resident in Kabul and the full occupation of the Khyber Pass by the British. However, after arriving in Kabul in July 1879, the British resident and his corps of guides bodyguards were wiped out by a mob of thousands of angry local residents in Kabul. In my opinion, this is one of the greatest and most heroic last stands of the era, but is largely an underreported action, likely as it occurred in the shadow of Isandlwana only a few months before. The British reinvaded Afghanistan, winning further victories at Kharisa, Kabul and Ahmed Khel in late 1879-1880. With the disaster in Maiwand in July 1880, when the British force was overwhelmed, the British commander, Lord Roberts, was forced to march from Kabul to Kandahar and defeat local Afghan forces, which ultimately wrapped up the war. Maiwand, being a defeat for the British, is not recognised with a clasp. Casualties belonging to units involved, such as the 66th Foot, typically had no clasps unless they were a survivor and may have received the Kandahar clasp. Theoretically, it's possible for our favourite polo-playing, poo-pooing general to have travelled to Afghanistan from Zululand in late 1879 to see action in 1880 as a junior officer. Melchett doesn't appear to have a Kabul to Kandahar star, so likely remained behind on typical cavalry work such as protecting the lines of communication. Number 3, the Ashanti Medal. The third medal looks like an out-of-sequence Ashanti medal, a war occurring in 1874, approximately 4 to 6 years or so before the Afghan War. I have covered the Ashanti medal in my Colour Sergeant Bourne video, so in the interest of time, we will cross this off as an incorrect award to our jingoistic general. Next up is the Egypt Medal and the related Khedive Star. This began with the Wolseley-led invasion of Egypt in 1882 over concerns about unrest in the country, attacks on European expatriates working in Egypt, as well as security concerns over the Suez Canal, which was a vital gateway to India. There were 13 clasps awarded for this medal over 7 years. These were also awarded for large engagements. I'm going to hazard a wild guess and say Melchett was deployed from India after the Afghan War, along with the India contingent that was attached to 2nd Division of the British force in Egypt and participated in the Battle of Tel el-Kebir. Although Sir Garnet Wolseley's logistical and planning genius may not have rubbed off on the young Melchett, I'm sure he was looking forward to moving his drinks cabinet closer to Cairo. More details about this campaign are in my video about Frederick Crack, a Royal Engineer who fought in the campaign, as well as Zululand and went ballooning in Botswana. There is a link in the description section. For the medal itself, the obverse shows a veiled head of Queen Victoria, and the reverse shows a reclining sphinx on a pedestal. The ribbon is 3 bright blue and 2 white stripes of equal width made to represent the blue and white Nile rivers. You can get many clasp combinations in this medal. The Khedive Star is a 5-pointed bronze star which was authorised by the Ottoman Sultan of Turkey, who nominally controlled Egypt, and conferred by the Khedive of Egypt, Tawfiq Muhammad, to all those involved in the related conflicts of the Egypt medal. The obverse has a central sphinx and 3 pyramids behind, embossed or written with the word Egypt and a date. The reverse shows the Khedive's monogram, TM, and a raised crown. This was generally awarded alongside the Egypt medal and issued unnamed. Number 5. Next up, for our tactically talentless top brass, one of my favourite medals, the India General Service 1895. This medal was awarded for operations on the northwest frontier between 1895 and 1902. 7 clasps were issued. I'm really going to get into these campaigns in later videos, but in summary, in 1897-1898, the northwest frontier was subject to one of the biggest revolts and uprisings led by the Pathan peoples in years, with the British even losing briefly control of the Khyber Pass. The news is said to have stunned Queen Victoria. This uprising caught the British off balance, and the deployment of over 36,000 troops was required to quell the trouble. There were some fascinating conflicts in this fight, including the heroic defence of Fort Gulistan, the last stand at Saraguri by the 36th Sikhs, and the storming of Dargay Heights by the Gordon Highlanders and 3rd Sikhs. The medal itself, like the majority of campaign medals, is silver, with bronze versions issued to camp followers. The obverse is a veiled bust of an ageing Queen Victoria, with the second type issued after her death in 1902. The second type was King Edward VII in Field Marshal's uniform, and this is generally found for the Waziristan clasp. The reverse is an Indian and British soldier supporting the royal standard with India 1895 impressed. It's likely Melchett would have deployed there while serving in a Queen's regiment on a tour of duty in India, perhaps serving with the young Winston Churchill, who saw his first taste of action here. With casualties rising during the fearsome fighting, maybe Melchett organised a drag show to improve the men's morale. On to the next medal. Number 6, the Queen's South Africa Medal, awarded for the Boer War. This was an enormous conflict with over 177,000 medals struck, and notable for several setbacks against the British. Perhaps this is where our legendary leader began formulating brilliant new tactical plans to ensure final victory in the field. He may have got a few tips from one of the British commanders, Sir Edward Buller. Initially, due to underestimating the Boers' resistance, the first batch of medals were actually struck for 1899 to 1900, to wrap up the initial victory the British thought they had had. However, that was premature, and the war devolved into a guerrilla insurgency and asymmetric warfare. 5 state clasps were awarded: Cape Colony, Natal, Rhodesia, Orange Free State and Transvaal. These were given because so many small actions occurred within those states it would have been a Herculean task to create various clasps. The remaining clasps were for battles or large significant actions. A maximum of 1 medal of 9 clasps were given to the Army and of 8 clasps to the Navy. Interestingly, there were 57 Australian units in South Africa at the time, which composed of 840 officers and 15,000 other ranks. During the siege of Ladysmith, carrier pigeons were used for communications. Perhaps Melchett's pet, Speckled Jim, saw some action here. The obverse shows a bust of an older Queen Victoria, and the reverse a figure of Britannia outstretched facing an advancing force of British and colonial troops with warships in the background. The ribbon is red with 2 dark blue stripes and a broad orange central stripe. The King's Medal was awarded to all who were in service on or after the 1st of January 1902 and who completed 18-month service before the 1st of June 1902. This medal was always issued alongside the Queen's South Africa Medal and never got issued without a clasp, with either South Africa 1901 or South Africa 1902, and both together. The obverse is King Edward VII in a Field Marshal's uniform. The reverse is the same as the Queen's Medal. The ribbon composes of 3 stripes, green, white and orange, which are all of equal width. Interestingly, it reminds me of the Irish flag. Number 7, the India General Service Medal 1908. 12 clasps were awarded for a series of minor campaigns which occurred between 1908 and 1935. Only 2 clasps were awarded before the outbreak of World War I. With large-scale British forces involved in the 1908 Northwest Frontier Momand expedition, it's very likely that General Melchett was involved in this campaign. However, I did cover that in my Lord Flashart video, so for a bit of fun today, I'm going to look at the Abor expedition or campaign of 1911 to 1912. So let's imagine our stark raving mad mustachioed icon participating in that campaign. The Abor campaign was a brigade strength expedition of 2 columns organised against the Abor Hill tribesmen after the assassination of some British officials in their tribal land. The Abor warriors had a military tradition and possessed a vast arsenal of spears, swords and bows that were tipped with poison. The tribesmen had a few antique firearms and also armoured themselves with bamboo helmets and shields. The campaign was hindered by thick impenetrable jungle, ambushes, attacks on supply lines and the use of defensive stockades by the Abor. Eventually the British overcame these obstacles, marched on and torched various tribal settlements, forcing a surrender. The obverse is a bust of George V, the new king after the death of Edward VII, and the reverse is Jamrud Fort that overlooks the Khyber Pass. The ribbon is dark green with a broad blue, almost black central stripe. And lastly, or bullying off for the final chucker, the 1914 star. Issued to British troops in 1917, the year Blackadder was set, this star was awarded to all those who served in France between the 5th of August and the 22nd of November 1914. As a senior officer and professional soldier, it's highly likely that General Melchett was serving with the British Expeditionary Force, or the BEF, in 1914 in France, serving at that time right behind his men, well, about 35 miles. The medal itself is a bronze 4-pointed star with the obverse displaying cross swords and a central scroll saying August and November. 400,000 were issued. The ribbon is watered silk, red, white and blue. That concludes today's video. I hope you found some value from this. Thanks for watching, and Melchett and I will see you in Berlin for coffee and cakes.